Hi, I'm Tracey.
Hi, and I'm Faye, and welcome to More Better with Tracey and Faye, the podcast where we help you become a better communicator, one episode at a time. Today, we're talking about common struggles when it comes to writing and communicating at work and what you can do about it. Stay tuned. This topic interests me because I observe the struggle to communicate at work every day. Heck, I'm in the struggle. So here's what I'm talking about. Strong, smart, capable people whose confidence crumbles when they have to draft an email, a slide, or present to a group or to leaders. So they come to me as the so-called resident communications expert to help them out. It got me thinking about what people commonly struggle with and how we can help. In previous episodes, we've referenced Grammarly's reports about the state of business communication, and it confirmed that my observation isn't unique. Yeah. Firstly, we are writing and producing more and more materials and communicating about them or using them to communicate at work more than ever. And it's not just us internal communicators, I mean everyone. So I'm going to cite from Grammarly's report. When it comes to common writing tasks and the average weekly time share, we are spending time writing communications to others, responding to communications from others, responding to written communications from others, creating materials to be shared, reviewing or editing other people's work, revising materials, all these other writing tasks. And that's taking up, according to Grammarly's report, 20 hours a week, half your time. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about what are the struggles when we're writing and producing more at work. The other thing that they talked about was the things that they're struggling with. We're going to talk about 4 things. They're struggling with communicating clearly so that everyone understands my message. They're struggling with identifying proper tone to use in their messaging. They're also struggling with understanding messages communicated by others and choosing the right platform or tool on how to communicate. I think it's something that we all experience. Tracey, what do you think?
Let's start with clarity in message. Do people understand my message? And it's the most basic, simple thing. Simple to understand what it is, not always simple to do. And in fact, in the Grammarly report, it said that over 1/3 of people struggle with this. I actually think that number is probably low because you know what? It's a struggle I have. You know, every time I write, I have to think really about the other person at the other end. In fact, a friend of mine who works in team dynamics and leadership dynamics, what she says to the people that she is working with is she says, you need to listen through the other person's ears.
I love that.
Right? There's a really strong image. And part of listening with someone else's ears is knowing what they want to listen for. And what you and I have talked about a lot is the fact that writing and thinking goes hand in hand. Can't really write anything that you have confidence will get you where you want to go if you do it without thinking. If I just sent an email to my boss or my boss's boss and it says, yeah, we got to reorg this team and I need a raise. They're not listening to that. They don't care about that. That's not going to happen. I could do it without thinking, but it's not going to help me. And maybe that's a silly example, but it really does that, you know, those two acts of thinking and writing go hand in hand. And so when there is this struggle to find clarity, what you and I go to often is using that 3Q model, those 3 questions that are easy to remember, but also when you apply them, when you start using that for your thinking, it does help narrow your view of what I can say. Because if I'm pitching a new idea or I'm struggling with something, I want to make an introduction to someone in some way. These are all things that involve other people. And when it involves the other person, you need to know who they are. And that's where clarity starts to come. So using 3Q, those 3 questions are, again, what's my objective? What am I hoping to achieve with this communication? Who's my audience? You know, who's going to help me get there? If I'm looking for approval, is my audience the approver? If I am wanting people to change a behavior, my audience are those people who need to change that behavior. So what's my objective? Who's my audience? And then the kicker is in question number 3. What do they need, the audience need to know in terms of information, context, and delivery? And think of those 3 questions this way. The information is the what, the how, the when, the who. Context is why and why now. Context is why they'll pay attention. So you need to know what's the context that's going to matter for them, what's going to get them paying attention. And then the delivery goes into what's the right channel, what's the right timing, what's the right tone to take. And so when you want to communicate clearly, take pause, ask these 3 questions of yourself, maybe write them down, and then proceed to start drafting whatever it is that you want now that you have a bit of a path shown to you by answering those questions.
I love that. What comes up for me when you said it helps you to narrow your focus, narrowing is a good thing, because what I've seen is that people come at a communication task with the information first. What do I need to tell them? I got to tell them this. I got to tell them that. And all the things that, and so what it's hard because then they have a hard time trying to shape that mold of clay. So what these 3 questions do, what 3Q does, is helps you to shape that clay with confidence, because you now focused, as you say, on your audience and you're focused on their ears, right? You're putting yourself into their shoes. What do they care about? How will this land for them?
And when I talk to clients about what your audience is, you can view them as a conduit. You can view them as an obstacle.
Yeah.
Frankly, it still requires the same sort of thinking. A conduit is a lot more positive. So it's going to put you in a better frame of mind. I wanted to pick up on something you said about the mold, the lump of clay. I love that analogy, and here's why. When I think it was Michelangelo who sculpted David, and when his approach to a lump of marble is the statue, the sculpture exists in the marble. I'm just removing all the extra bits. So that's what I think of editing, which is not really what we're talking about today, but I feel like editing is just removing all the extra bits so that the sculpture, this beautiful message in the middle, can be revealed. So what you just said, that 3Q helps put the lump of clay into more of a shape. And then anyway, and it just fits with the idea of editing is just getting rid of all the other extra pieces so that the core beauty of what you're doing gets revealed.
I love that. The third part of 3Q is around delivery. Like there's a part of 3Q is around delivery. And we spoke about tone. So one of the things that came up in the research is that % of people are saying they struggle with this. This is probably where I spend the most time, especially if it's a sensitive message. Am I too harsh? Am I too bold? Am I not bold enough? Am I going to come across as a jerk in this communication? Tone is tricky. When Tracey and I talk about tone, we refer to it as the attitude of your voice. But what's important about tone is that it's driven by your audience. What we mean is that you change your tone depending on who your audience is. For example, if you're delivering something for decision makers or leaders versus your peer group, a stakeholder group, or your colleagues, your tone changes. So I thought we'd share a few things to consider when you're struggling around tone. Active voice versus passive voice. Don't worry, we're not going to nerd out on passive voice and active voice. Active voice, eliminate the passive voice. Here, that's the example. Passive voice, the passive voice is to be eliminated. So we're big fans of active voice. Put your verbs in front, not in the back. I know perhaps it has its place in academia and other places, and fine, it can live there and stay there. But if you're writing at work, use the active voice, not the active voice is to be used. Okay, that's it. I'm not going to nerd out anymore about that, Tracey. Another question we often get is around harsh versus direct tone. So when we think about harsh tone, it focuses blame. It's using language that might be perceived as a personal attack or dismissive. Be cold or clinical. If you're direct, you're focusing on the issue at hand. It's using clear and respectful language to communicate expectations or feedback without causing offense. So if you're worried about, I'm not sure if this is harsh or direct, use those definitions as a litmus test. And then the third thing that we often come across or get asked about is, should I make it formal or casual? So formal usually falls in the area of being professional, using very precise language, adhering to grammar rules. Casual tone is more relaxed and conversational. It's using contractions and slang and uses a more personal voice. Anything you want to add around tone, Tracey?
One of the ways to make something that you still want it to be direct, but you don't want it to be harsh, is you can build in phrases. It's for your consideration, or maybe something people need to do. Something you need to do. You need to, come Monday, stop using the red pens and start using the green pens. But you can include in that, you don't need to be apologetic. And I would recommend should do, if it's something that someone's just going to have a hard time swallowing it, acknowledge their discomfort, acknowledge the impact on them. So you can still be direct, but that shows that you are aware of what the impact of whatever this thing is on the other person. So harsh would be, I know it sucks, do it anyway. Direct would be, I know this is a challenge. How can I support you? It's still important that we get this done. So it's just using different ways. It's how you couch things. How do you deliver water? Do you throw it in their face, or do you put it in a glass and hand it to them on a tray? Just came up with that one.
No, I love that. I love that. Be aware of when you're being apologetic. Love that.
Yeah, I saw something recently, just this morning on social media, and I've seen it before, but they're phrases to use so that in business communication that take you out of being either apologetic or accepting blame or saying, I know this is a stupid question, but all those things that minimize you, and turn that language around into something that just does not minimize. It says, rather than saying, I'm so sorry for being late, you say, thank you for your patience. Things like that. And it's a way to be clear. It's a way to be direct, and it's a way to do it without minimizing yourself. So lots to talk about tone, and I think we probably will talk more about this in another episode.
Yeah, I think we could probably spend a whole episode on tone. It's tricky.
It is. Actually, if I can interrupt for just a minute, there is one thing else I wanted to add. Despite Tracey's major cautions around AI, I love when I talk about myself in the third person. I do have, obviously, concerns and a lot of cautionary tales around using AI, but tone is a place that it could help you. You know, you could say, if you draft something up and it feels a bit too harsh, that you think it's not going to land well, you can ask AI for, how could I make this a bit softer? How could I make this, if you feel too formal and you think the audience might appreciate something more casual, make this more casual. So it's great because I can give you instant feedback and instant ideas on that. But, capital B-U-T, don't let AI take away your voice. Your voice matters. It absolutely does. Caution people against taking what AI delivers and using it as your own stuff without putting some of you back into it, because then it will feel false to the other person. And the longer the document or the email, the more false it will ring. AI writing has some really obvious tells. There's a rhythm to it, makes it really clear. So don't do that. Use it where it can help you. It's a great tool for helping you for something like tone, but don't take what it gives you as gospel. It's just a suggestion, possible guidance, but the thinking is all yours.
I love how you said that. I love how you said, put your voice back into the communication, because your recipient is looking for that. They want to know that it comes from you. And if you use AI to replace your voice, your audience sees that. Tone is driven by your audience, and they will see that right away. It will feel fake. And we never want to come across as that in our communication. Thanks for that example.
All right. The next area that we wanted to dive into from the Grammarly report is the issue of understanding messages communicated by other people. So you get something from someone else, either verbally or on your screen in some way, shape, or form. 33% of people, so 1/3, big chunk, say they really struggle with understanding messages that they receive from other people. And again, I feel that number is probably small. But the question is, you get something, it lands in front of you, and you don't understand. So what do you do? What can you do? And Faye and I really believe in coming from a place of empathy and compassion, coming from a place of assuming that the person who sent you this information, who delivered this information to you somehow, was actually not trying to do a bad job of it. And in fact, I've had this question come up with a couple different audiences or some comment about it, because when we talk about 3Q and say, it's my job as the sender of the information to do all this upfront work. I have to do the thinking to enable myself the best possibility for success. And what I've had come up from a couple different places is people go, so what you're saying is it's all on me. And they say, what about the other person? What about the recipient that doesn't respond? And my answer to that is always, we can only control what we can control. So we can't control the other person, but we can control how we choose to respond when it comes to us. So be the audience that you want to be. So if someone sends you this big block of text and you have no idea what this is, you're trying to read it, it's just a bunch of words coming at you and you feel annoyed, understandable. You feel like, what am I supposed to do with this? And so what will often happen? You ignore it. Yeah. Or please send this to me. And like, I can't even read this. What the hell is this? Can you break through the weeds for me? What's going on here? Neither of which is helpful. So when you are the receiver, and if you don't understand, pick up the phone. I know, crazy. The quickest way to get any kind of resolution, if you're confused, is to directly speak to the person, not to go back and forth. Because emailing back and forth to try to find clarification is a very long way to get there. And that path is full of a lot of potholes. And a friend of mine heard a data point that said, if there is a misunderstanding and it took 10 minutes of conversation to resolve that misunderstanding, that's the equivalent of 34 emails going back and forth.
Oh my God, no, you have not shared that. That is...
And it kind of makes sense, especially if these emails are just short. No, I don't get it. Well, I told you this. Yeah, but I still don't get it. Well, go look here. I couldn't find the information. Just go look on the page. There it is. We've seen it. I literally saw it with a client who had that situation going on. And she was like, how do I get what I need out of this? So if you don't understand messages communicated by others, ask clarifying questions and ask them from a place of empathy and curiosity, not assuming bad intent or telling people that they are bad or wrong in some way in how and why and when they sent this communication.
I just think about the email threads or Teams chats when it's two people they're playing ping pong, and you're part of this audience, like you're on the CC list. Like, I feel bad, like, for both of them. I feel like, why don't you just pick up the phone? And maybe there are politics at play, but what a waste of time that is. I've heard from developers who really don't have to communicate, but they're watching this back and forth and they're trying to get information or understand something because they have to do their job, their little bit. And that's wasting their time. Man, what did you say? 10 minutes of a conversation is equal to how many emails?
34 for resolving an issue.
Us.
Yeah. You brought up a really good point that I hadn't considered before about that back and forth. When it's a string that there are multiple people on, you are doing such a disservice to everybody else if that back and forth continues. And you're right, that starts to feel political, that starts to feel personal,
yes.
frankly.
Yes.
And political and personal is not clarity and effective communication. They do not work together.
They do not.
And I think we all need to think about, how are we responding? How are we receiving imperfect communication?
And how can we respond? What we can control is how we respond. So in Tracey's words, be the audience that you want to be. All right. The fourth element that people say they're struggling with is choosing the right platform or tool to communicate. Because let's face it, there are more tools, more technology, more platforms than ever before. 26% of respondents say that they struggle with this. When Tracey and I first started working, there was an intranet, there was email, and that was really the only ways people got information.
Newsletter.
And a newsletter.
There was a newsletter.
Delivered via email. Is that right? Can't remember.
We had online news and we had paper news.
Paper. That's right. Paper. That's right. But now there are so many channels. Teams chat, SharePoints, Slack channels, pick your poison. They're everywhere.
WhatsApp. That's a big one.
WhatsApp. Yeah, that's right. WhatsApp. And then, I was chatting with a CEO of a small company, and he was saying how employees no longer live in intranets. They used to. I don't know if you remember that, but they used to live in the intranet, and that's where you got your news, but they don't really live there anymore. They're living in team chats and other things. So when it comes to communications, how do you know what tool to use? So I'm going to go back to referencing Q, or those 3 questions, and go back to the why of your communication. And like I said before, delivery is the third part of 3Q. And there's a reason for that. It's the output of all of that critical thinking. What often happens, though, is the typical request is that it comes from someone, a leader usually says, we need an email. We need an email to senior leadership about X. My response is not always, my response is yes, and. So sure, maybe the email is the best channel for that group. Maybe that's the way they prefer to get information. But I think it's okay to question it, to make sure that we're meeting the objective. So a quick example is that I worked on a change project and that request came in. So big change project, and they said, we need to send an update to leadership about this project. But I want all this information in the email. 5 options, rationale, pros and cons, all of these things. So what we did is we reviewed, okay, well, who's our audience? What do we need them to do? Make some decisions. And what we ended up doing was we created a shorter email with decision points. We attached a 1-pager because leaders, especially leaders, they love a 1-pager. But we had all the details so we could outline those options. And then what we did is we got into the practice of, okay, we need to communicate to leaders about the project. They need a lot of detail, but we don't want to create this long detail in their inbox. So we're going to manage expectations and create an email that's concise and has the key points. And then for those who want the details, they can have the 1-pager. So that's what we did. I guess my point in that example is just consider your audience, like we say in 3Q, consider your objectives and just think about what do they need? What's the best way to deliver that information? And is there wiggle room? What flexibility could we either influence or what could we suggest so that they can get the information that they need to complete the objective?
I love what you said about consistency, because I think that is the number one thing when it comes to channels. And because so many channels, like you said, exist in organizations today, so there's the ones that exist, say, within the walls, theoretical walls of an organization, the internet, your Teams channels, your Slack channels, your, all of those. But I can also communicate with other people in the company by just a text. I can just text them from my phone to their phone. And now I'm outside the walls of this, of the organization. When we communicate through so many different channels, the same information, but differently through different channels, it creates so much confusion for people. So, what you did with that one project, say, this is how we're going to do it. And any update related to this project is going to look like this in this email. So leaders come to know that that's where they will be getting their information. And that's good. People like consistency.
Yeah.
It is a relief to send an email and say, you can check this part of the internet for that, but then we've also got this on our external website. And when people have multiple places to go for the same thing, they're not going to go there. So make it as easy for your audience as possible to find, retrieve, hear, learn, listen, whatever it is that you need them, the context and the information that they need to make that decision, to take that action, to adopt that new behavior, whatever that is. Because when we each just pick a channel, because I like doing it this way. So I'm not giving any thought to what my audience needs. I just like doing all these things through Teams chats.
Yeah.
Never an email, never a video, never a town hall. We don't talk about this stuff anywhere other than a Teams chat, because that's how I like to do things. Yeah. Good for you, Tracey. You are not going to succeed in this communication.
Well, and good luck finding anything. Good luck finding what was that decision from 3 months ago? Now you have to sift through that horrid chat. So anyway, we can talk about that in another episode. To recap, in this episode, we talked about a few of the common struggles people have when it comes to writing and communicating at work per Grammarly's 2003 report on the state of business communication. The things we talked about are communicating clearly so everyone understands my message, identifying the proper tone to use in messaging, understanding messages communicated by others, and choosing the right platform or tool to communicate. So a few thoughts about the impacts of poor communication at work. I'm going to refer to Grammarly's 2024 report. They claim that poor communication drags well-being and performance. And I think we're seeing that. We just talked about people struggling with those aspects of communication. And when you're struggling to communicate, and because we're doing communicating more at work, that stress is high. If we want people to struggle less with communicating and writing at work, we believe training people is the answer. Critical thinking and writing go hand in hand. They are the winning combination of peanut butter and chocolate.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
So if people are struggling with tone and clarity, channel choice and understanding, we believe that training that marries critical thinking and business writing can help. Rather than accepting or tolerating the struggle to communicate and its impact on our productivity and in well-being in the workplace, let's use training to mitigate or avoid it. And with that, I'm Faye.
And I'm Tracey. Join us next time on More Better with Tracey and Faye.